Good evening. How's everyone tonight? Hope everyone had a nice weekend. Boy, Sunday night rolls around rather fast, doesn't it? Seemed like it was just Friday the other day. Anyway, here we are. Sharon Schultz here, the Bay Lady. And instead of doing a virtual tour around the Bay, I am instead having issues with this already. Hold on. Hold on. Why is that going to do that? Okay. Anyway, so tonight we will continue reading Nancy Drew Mystery Stories. We are reading book number 5 in the Nancy Drew Mystery Series by Carolyn Keene. This is called The Secret of Shadow Ranch, and we're about halfway through already, actually. If you have missed any episodes, you can go back on Facebook and on YouTube, and they should still be posted for you to take a look. Now, this is a problem. My screen is going dark, and I don't know why. And it's going to cut me off, and that's not a very good thing. So, well, I guess we'll take the chance. Okay. So, chapter 9, A Rewarding Search. Dave rose to his feet. Well, Nancy, you caught me fair and square. She noted the spade at his feet. It looked as though her suspicions about Dave had been right. Are you digging for treasure? She asked coldly. Yes, he said, but I'm not pulling the phantom trick or causing the damage around here. Please believe me, Nancy. Let me tell you my story. George advised it better be good. Dave said, my brother and sister and I are the only remaining descendants of Francis Yumber. I was born in Buffalo, New York, but our family moved to Phoenix when I was 10. We have Valentine's original will and had always known the story of his treasure, but never bothered to hunt for it. However, since my father's death 2 years ago, things have been hard with us. I've been working my way through college, but we'll need more money to help educate my younger brother and sister. So I decided to take a summer job on Shadow Ranch and look for the treasure. How amazing, Bess murmured. Dave reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. In the beam of her flashlight, Nancy saw it was a faded photo of a pretty woman. She also noticed that the corner was torn and the picture was just the right size to fit into the watch case. This is Francis Humber, she announced. The cowboy looked surprised. How did you know? Instead of replying, Nancy asked him where he had obtained the picture. He explained that after Frances Humberdale's death, her friend in Tumbleweed, Miss Phillips, had removed the photograph from the watch and sent it to Frances's children in the East. It had been handed down in our family since then. Dave turned the picture over, and on the back, the girls saw the word seller written in old-fashioned script. He told them that the tradition in his family was that the cellar was the location of the treasure. Nancy was excited with this new clue, but before telling him about the note in the watch, She asked him why he had not told Ed Rowley what he was doing. I was afraid he wouldn't hire me. He might have figured I spent all my time searching. The cowboy assured Nancy that he had done all his treasure hunting in off-duty hours. How did you know about the secret entrance? Bess asked. Stories about that have always been known in my family, Dave answered. Originally, the trees grew thickly around the spring house, and in times of Indian attack, the occupants would escape by the secret exit into the woods and go to a hideout on the mountain slope. Dave confessed that he was the prowler who had alarmed Mrs. Thurmond in the kitchen. He had hoped to search for the treasure in the cellar that night, right after his turn on guard duty. But you raised such a rumpus, he said to Nancy with a grin, that I knew it was no use to go on. I sneaked out through the spring house and came around to the kitchen a little behind the rest of the crowd. I believe you, said Nancy, but you must promise to tell Mr. Rowley first thing in the morning what you've been doing. The cowboy assured her that he would. I'm sorry, I was kind of rude to you girls. I just didn't want you hanging around and getting in the way of my treasure hunt. You were pretty awful, said George, but maybe we'll forgive you. Of course we will, Bess agreed. Nancy smiled at Dave and he chuckled. All along, I couldn't help liking you, he said. Nancy reached into her pocket and bought out the antique watch. She showed him how the secret lid opened. The picture of Frances fit perfectly to the torn fragment on the empty side. You're amazing, he said. What a detective. Next, Nancy removed the picture of Valentine and turned it over so Dave could see what was written on the back. With the word on your picture, we now have a complete message, Nancy said excitedly. Green bottle in cellar, Dave read. Surely the treasure would be too large for a bottle, but perhaps it's a clue to the real thing. That's what Nancy figured, George said. Let's start digging. For half an hour, Dave dug and the girls probed the loose dirt for a bottle. Suddenly, Bess cried out, I found it! Nancy hurried to her side and pressed in the earth where Beth showed her. Her fingers touched the neck of a bottle with a cap on it. Dave came over and spaded carefully around the glass. When it was partially free, Nancy said, wait. She brushed the dirt from the large bottle and shone her light on it. Bess exclaimed in disappointment. The bottle was black. No use bothering with that, Nancy said. We're looking for a green one. This one has been lying here for years and gradually became covered with dirt. With grim determination, the treasure hunters continued to dig and sift the earth. When they had worked over the whole cellar floor, the four stopped, exhausted, and sat down. Bess expressed the thought that was in all of their minds. Maybe someone has found it already. Shorty, perhaps, Dave said. I've caught him snooping. He told the girls that he suspected the other cowboy of knowing about the secret entrance and of inflicting damage on the ranch. I'm not sure he's working alone either, but who else is in league with him? I don't know. Nancy pointed out that if Shorty and his accomplices had found the treasure, they would have left the ranch by now. The young detective said, "There's another person who might have found the bottle, Frances Humber herself." What do you think of her story, Dave? Only that Dirk Valentine and Frances had met only once on Shadow Ranch. He sent her a message that he was coming, and Frances slipped out of the house through the secret entrance and met him in the spring house. Oops. Okay. But the law after Valentine, as usual, the law was after Valentine as usual, and he had to leave the territory. He wrote to Frances, however, during the summer of 1880, but her father intercepted the letter and sent Frances to visit friends in Montana. Then Valentine probably hid the bottle in the cellar when Frances was away. And maybe he sent her the watch with the location of the bottle written on the backs of the pictures. That's right, Bess declared. The date on the watch is June 1880. Dave went on to say that Frances must have written to Valentine and told him on what day she would return. For that night, the outlaw sneaked into the ranch to see her. But the sheriff and the posse suspected that he would come. They were lying in wait and shot Valentine as he entered the spring house. A few minutes later, the sheriff went to the living room to tell his daughter. When he found her lighting a lamp, he told her that her sweetheart had been killed and she fainted. "Oh no," cried Bess. "For many weeks she was ill," Dave continued. "During that time, her father found the watch sent to her by Valentine and he took it. When she was well enough to travel, he sent her to stay with relatives in Buffalo. There she married, had 2 children, and died while still a young woman." George sighed. "Poor thing. She never had a chance to come back here and hunt for her treasure." Suddenly, Dave stood up. "I must go now," he said. "I have to stand watch soon in the East Meadow." Quickly, the foursome left the cellar by the secret entrance and parted outside the spring house. The girls went to shower and change their clothes. As Nancy dressed, she mulled over the story that Dave had told her. She tried to reconstruct the scene at the ranch house on the night of the outlaw's death. If Frances had returned home only that afternoon, Nancy reasoned, she may not have had a chance to look in the cellar for the bottle until that night. No doubt she also knew or guessed that her sweetheart would come to see her at the place they had met before. When the shots were fired, Frances would surely have heard them. Here, Nancy came to the part of the story that puzzled her. Maybe Frances Humber was in the cellar and ran upstairs to light a lamp. But why? It would have been more natural for her to go outside to be with Valentine. But Suppose Frances had already found the bottle. At the sound of the shot, she dashed upstairs in a panic, then found that she still had the bottle in her hand. Of course, she hid it in the lamp, Nancy said aloud. Then, when her father walked in, Frances lit the lamp to cover her action. As the bewildered looks on the faces of Bess and George, Nancy chuckled. Quickly, she told them her new theory. We must ask Aunt Bet if any of the old Hummer lamps are still on the premises. The girls hurried to the living room and found Mrs. Raleigh seated in a rocker, mending her husband's socks. In response to Nancy's question, she told her there was a lot of junk from former owners in a storeroom next to Alice's bedroom. The girls hurried down the hall and entered the storeroom. Bess switched on the ceiling lights. Amidst old trunks, baskets, and barrels, they found a bird cage and a hat stand, but no lamp. On the seat of a broken chair lay a ragged quilt with something wrapped in it. Nancy carefully unfolded the bed cover. Revealed was a large oil lamp with a deep ruby glass well. Bess gave a gasp of excitement, and George said, "If only it's the right one." With anxious fingers, Nancy removed the chimney and the wick. She reached into the well and pulled out a slender green glass bottle. Number 12, lights out. What wonderful luck, Nancy exclaimed softly. To think of finding this bottle after all these years. Let's see what's inside it, Bess urged. Nancy put her little finger into the bottle and slid out a curled up paper. Carefully, she unrolled it, then glanced at the signature at the bottom. A bold V and a heart. It's a letter from Valentine to Frances, Nancy said. The girls crowded close and peered at the faded handwriting. The long dead romance came alive for them as Nancy read aloud. My dear girl, I am writing this in haste to tell you that I truly love you. Would that we could marry, but the law pursues me, and I doubt I will live much longer. Too late, I am sorry for my misspent life. How sad, Bess murmured. I want you to have my fortune, the note continued, but many people are seeking it. I know my mail is seized. I have hidden instructions in this bottle. A little of my booty has been converted to gold and melted down into special pieces, dear Frances, made just for you. I wonder what he meant, said George. As Nancy was about to read on, the ceiling light went out. George gave an exclamation of annoyance. What a time for the bulb to go. Wait here and I'll get one from the kitchen. As George felt her way out of the room, a suspicion flashed across Nancy's mind. Slipping the letter into her shirt pocket, she said, "Come on, Bess," and went down the hall with her friend at her heels, asking what the matter was. In the living room, Nancy saw the shadowy figure of Aunt Bet standing by a table lamp. The lights won't work, she said. At the same time, Alice's voice came up the hall. Did someone blow a fuse? Her fears growing, Nancy groped her way to the telephone and picked it up. The line was dead. She ran her hand down the wire. It had been cut. Nancy returned to the living room as George hastened in from the kitchen. No lights there either, she reported, and probably no water, Nancy added grimly. The pump runs by electricity. Oops. Runs by electricity, she went on to say. Someone had probably damaged the generator or cut all the wires. There was a moment of shocked silence. But why? Alice asked in her frightened voice. I'm afraid our enemies are about to make more trouble. They figure we're helpless without lights or a phone. What do you think they'll do? Aunt Bet asked nervously. Nancy said she could not be sure, of course, but she expressed fears about the new Palamonians. We must report this to the men on patrol, said Mrs. Rowley. They may not yet know anything about the power failure. Sorry about that. I'm back. Lord help me. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. Nancy wheeled and hurried to the door, then paused, well aware it might be dangerous to go inside. She opened the door quietly and stood listening. Except for the nickering of a restless animal, all was quiet. Nancy stepped in and walked cautiously between the two rows of stalls. When she reached the one where her horse stood, it occurred to her that someone might have unsaddled him to prevent her from being the first to go after the phantom. But she found the saddle still in place. As Nancy walked quietly along the left side of the horse, he whinnied nervously. She murmured reassuringly to him and stroked his head. Then she felt the girth to make sure it had not been loosened, and she ran her hands over the bridle. Everything was in order. She was about to leave the stall when there came a loud whinny from the other end of the stable and the sound of a hoof hitting a bucket. Nancy froze. She heard a footstep. Suppose it was one of the gang. If he finds me, she thought, I'll be trapped in this stall, unable to sound the alarm. Nancy knew she must try to get out of the stable. The footstep had seemed to be near the excited horse, but exactly where was the intruder now? Nancy slipped out of the stall and, hugging the wall, moved towards the door. The next moment, she was seized from behind with a hard hand, stifling her outcry. As Nancy struggled, there came a sharp exclamation, and she was suddenly released. Nancy, said a familiar voice. It was Tex. Great jumping steers. I'm sorry. Are you all right? The cowboy asked anxiously. Shucks, girl, I thought you were one of that phantom gang. Nancy took a deep breath. I thought you were too, she said, and quickly told him her news. The cowboy gave a low whistle. Trouble's coming, that's for sure. Where are all the guards? Nancy asked. Mr. Raleigh and Walt Saunders have gone down the valley toward Tumblewood to watch the road. Mr. Raleigh figured if outsiders are helping to do the damage, they might come part way by car, park it, and sneak into the ranch on foot. If that's how it's done, maybe he and Saunders can nab him too. Shorty took early watch, so he's probably sacked out in the bunkhouse. I'm set I'm set to guard the stable area, Tex went on, but I figured I'd sure be less conspicuous on foot. A while ago, I heard a noise from here and came in to check. It was nothing, just Daisy thumping around. She's restless tonight. Okay. Okay, let's see. So, okay. All right. The cowboy gave a low whistle. Trouble's coming, that's for sure. Where are all the guards? Nancy asked. Mr. Raleigh and Walt Sanders have gone down the valley towards Tumbleweed to watch the road. Mr. Raleigh figured if outsiders are helping to do the damage, they might come part way by car, park it, and then sneak into the ranch on foot. Excuse me, getting a little dry there. Okay. If that's how it's done, maybe he and Saunders can grab him. Shorty took early watch, so he's probably sacked out in the bunkhouse. I'm set to guard the stable area, Tex went on, but I figured I'd sure be less conspicuous on foot. A while ago, I heard a noise from here and came in to check. It was nothing, just Daisy thumping around. She's restless tonight. Who's watching the Palominos? Nancy asked. Bud. He wasn't a few minutes ago. Oh, said Tex. Something's wrong there. He'd never leave his post. Come on. The two hastened outside. As they turned toward the meadow from the far end came a huge, weird whistle. The signal for the phantom horse. Tex stopped short, then raced toward the house, shouting the alarm. Moments later, the changing of the iron triangle outside the kitchen filled the light. Nancy, meanwhile, had sprinted on into the table and laid out her horse. As she sprang into the saddle, she could see the mysterious glowing steed galloping from the trees into the meadow. It hardly seemed to touch the ground, and it wavered in the wind. I'm going to catch it, Nancy vowed, and spurred her horse to racing speed. Straight ahead lay the meadow gate, but it was closed. Taking a deep breath, Nancy gathered her mount and cleared it. As before, the phantom was heading straight across the meadow. Nancy rode hard to cut the animal off. She intended to seize the phantom's bridle should he have it on. In a moment, the apparition turned and raced down the meadow straight towards the Palominos. Shrilly whinnying, it plunged into their midst. Some Palominos shied and reared, others ran wild. Nancy's horse, trying to overtake the fleeing phantom, pounded through the scattered group. Suddenly, one of the frightened people thundered across her path. Frantically, she tried to pull her own mount aside. Too late, the two horses collided. Nancy flew from the saddle and hit the ground, running so hard she laughed. Nancy flew from the saddle. She hit the ground and she blacked out. Let's see here how we're going. Okay. Chapter 13. Missing Artist. When Nancy regained consciousness, Dave was bending over her. Are you okay? He asked anxiously, helping her to sit up. Any bones broken? No, said Nancy. I guess I'm just bruised. Have I been laying here long? Only a few minutes, Dave replied. I saw you smack into that palomino and go sailing off. You really reached for the moon. Dave lifted Nancy to her feet and steadied her for a moment. As she thanked him, she could hear horses whinnying and men shouting. That phantom sure spooked the palominos, Dave said. Did you get a good look at it? Nancy shook her head regretfully. I didn't get close enough to see how it was rigged. A horseman reined up beside them. It was Walt Santers. Fences have been cut, the ranch foreman barked. We've got to round up those palominos. Could take all night or longer if they run into the hills. He spurred off, and Dave turned to Nancy. Can you make it to the house by yourself? Don't worry about me, she assured him. I'm fine. Dave looked around in the darkness, but there was no sign of Nancy's horse. I reckon he bolted, he said. His own account, a seasoned work animal, stood nearby, unaffected by the panic in the meadow. Dave stepped into his saddle. Keep clear of those running horses, he warned, then rode off after the foreman. By the time Nancy had walked the length of the meadow to the ranch house, she no longer felt shaken from her fall. In the living room were the older three girls and Aunt Bet. On the table, lighted, was the oil lamp which had belonged to the Humbers. As Nancy walked in, Bess cried, Did you catch the phantom? Sorry, no. Was there any damage this time? Miss Renshaw asked. Nancy reported the bad news about the cut bacon and the palomino. Aunt Bet's voice was strained as she said, If we lose those horses, it will be a crushing blow for us. I appreciate all you've done, Nancy. Bess and George told me how you found the letter. It was so clever of you to deduce what Francis Hummer did, Alice said admiringly. But you didn't finish reading it, George reminded Nancy. Nancy took the letter from her pocket, smoothed it out, and held it close to the oil lamps. George said, You left off where he said he had melted down some gold into special pieces. Yes, here's the place, said Nancy. She read the next sentence. My treasure is hidden in the oldest dwelling on the ranch. That's this house, Aunt Bet exclaimed. We were told that Sheriff Humber built it first. Read on, Bess urged. Exactly where is the treasure? Nancy shook her head. He doesn't say. Listen, I fear I am followed, and even this note may fall into my enemy's hands. Therefore, I will say only that you know the place I mean. George grinned. We'll have to search the whole house. We'd better get started. There's likely to be a space under the chimney floorboard, said Nancy, or a niche in a chimney that, for all intents and purposes, could be a false wall in a closet. She suggested that each of them take a section of the house to investigate. Nancy herself went to the big fireplace in the dining room. She thought that one of the stones in it might conceal a hiding place. With the aid of her flashlight, the young sleuth tried to peer between the rocks, but they were set together close, and no one in the public space was visible. She pushed hard on each one, but none budged. When she finished, Nancy turned her attention to the Indian grindstone. Because it was set in the middle, she thought there might be something special about it and tried hard to move the stone, but it was as tightly in place as all the others. By the time Nancy had finished checking the living room, the rest of the searchers had snuggled back. They reported no success. Baffled, Nancy suggested that they go to bed. She felt sore and weary. Maybe I'll be able to think more clearly after I get some sleep. She gave Valentine a letter. She gave Valentine's letter to Aunt Bet for safekeeping. At breakfast, Uncle Ed was gray-faced and grim. None of the men had been to bed the night before. 6 palominos are missing, and 2 are wire cut, the rancher reported. Tex snorted. The meadow fence was wrecked. Some no-good varmint cut it in at least 30 places. We've been working on repairs all night. Dave is still out there finishing up. Uncle Ed announced that he was driving into Tumbleweed to tell the sheriff what happened. Maybe he can spare me a man or could get me some volunteers to help me round up the horses. We'll have to go up in the mountain and look for them. I'll also have the telephone company send a man to fix the wire. What about the water? Mrs. Thurmond asked. The rancher replied that the pump and the lights would be working in a couple of hours. The generator was damaged, he said, but not seriously. The big mischief was the attack on the horses, Nancy remarked. Whoever planned that wanted to be sure things would be dark and confused and you could not get help in a hurry. The rancher quickly finished eating and was rising to go when Dave came in. The cowboy asked if he could see the Raleighs alone for a few minutes and added, "You come too, Nancy." Uncle Ed led the way into the living room and closed the door. "Now, what is it?" he asked. Swiftly, Dave told the couple about his search for the bandit's fortune. "If I do find the treasure," he added earnestly, "I certainly intend to turn over a share to you." Mr. Raleigh smiled. "Thank you, Dave, but we wouldn't hear of it. I wish you luck." Aunt Bet now told the men about at Valentine's Nancy's discovery of Valentine's letter. Nancy pointed out that surely the treasure was linked to the trouble on the ranch. Until it's found, I'm afraid the phantom horse will continue to appear. Uncle Ed agreed. "You're a remarkable sleuth, young lady. Keep up the good work." Dave said that with Nancy on the case, he thought they had a good chance to find the treasure. "But I won't be able to do much today. We have those palominos to look for." Nancy admitted that she did not exactly know what to look for. when they search for the hidden treasure. Aunt Bet patted her shoulder. You need a birthday from all around this world. Wait a second. I don't know where to search. You need a holiday from all this trouble. Why don't you girls drive into Phoenix for some fun? That's a wonderful idea, Nancy said. As she had thought, her friends were delighted at the prospect. Nancy hurried to get the ranch wagon. When she pulled up in front of the patio, George was waiting with 2 thermos bottles and a jug of water. As she put them into the back of the ranch wagon, Dave came hurrying past. He grinned. I'm glad to see you tenderfoot gals have turned into water conscious Westerners. Alice and Bess were approaching the car and heard him. When he was out of earshot, Alice said, As for you, Nancy, he's really flipped. And what'll poor Ned do? George teased. Nancy grinned. We'll be home by the time he gets back from Europe. Just wait until the square dance tomorrow night, said Bess. I'll bet Dave's a marvelous dancer. I wish, said Alice, that there was somebody to take me. There was a gleam in Bess's eye as she said, Don't give up hope, Alice. You might meet somebody at the rodeo or barbecue. George looked at her cousin quizzically, and Nancy smiled. Both knew Beth loved playing the role of matchmaker. What have you got up your sleeve, George? Demanded. Just my arm, replied Bess, but she grinned. Nancy spoke up. Let's do some shopping in Phoenix. I'd like to find something special to wear tomorrow. I know, exclaimed Bess. Let's all buy Indian costumes. When they reached the city, George directed Nancy to a shop which sold a variety of Indian apparel and souvenirs. The sight of the colorful squad dresses above all thoughts of the ranch trouble from the girls' minds. Happily, they tried them on and helped one another make selections. Alice was delighted and pirouetted in front of the long mirror to match the wide skirts swinging out. Finally, Nancy closed a remarkable book. Finally, Nancy chose a turquoise blue model with silver rickrack trimming. George's choice was a bold red, which set off her short, dark hair. And Bess selected one with a yellow skirt and black bodice. Alice picked out a pumpkin-colored costume trimmed in black. With their purchases in boxes, the girls strolled down the street to a Spanish restaurant. Here they ate a delicious lunch of tacos, spicy chili, and for dessert, they had iced fresh fruit. Bess sighed. That was super. Afterward, they walked to a white street beside a park where an outdoor painting exhibition was being held. The group stopped now and then to admire and compliment the artist who sat beside their work. As the other girls lingered over a painting, Nancy wandered ahead, then stopped before a lone picture. After a casual glance, she suddenly realized that it was a good pastel drawing of the old hotel lady that goes to um from the lost my place from the ghost town. Quickly, after casual glance, she suddenly realized that it was a pastel drawing of the old hotel in the ghost town on Shadow Mountain. Quickly, she called her friends. That's the same hotel, all right, George declared. The one where we hitched our horses and found that crushed crayon. Alice was pale. My father did that pastel. I know it. The artist's chair beside the picture was vacant. I must find him, Alice cried out. All right, my Nancy Drew friends, we're going to stop here because this lady's tired. And I'm going to keep on losing my place until I nod out right here on live stream. And I'm not going to do that. Okay, so next Sunday night, we will continue with Nancy Drew and The Secret of Shadow Ranch. I hope y'all have a great evening. Good night.